Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. I am so excited about this conversation today. I have my friends Sarah Thomas and Bob Kramer, and they are two of the people who are really helping our whole industry rethink what senior living should be like. And so I'm going to bring them both on now, and then I'm actually going to disappear and let them have a conversation. So here we go, and here we go. And again, I'm not going to ask you how old you are, Sarah, but I do need to say that you had a birthday this week, so happy birthday. And with that, Bob and Sarah, I'm going to step out and let you go at it.
Great. Well, thanks, Steve, and welcome everyone. We're delighted you're with us on this Friday, and I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Thomas. I know many of you know Sarah or know about her work, but just to give you a little bit of background, Sarah had a distinguished career in leadership roles with Genesis, including opening an innovation lab in China. She served as Innovation Fellow at Aging 2.0. She's consulted with and worked with a number of different startups. And perhaps most relevant to our discussion today, she's been spending a lot of time both as consultant and as advisor speaker with innovators in other industries, in other sectors outside senior living. Our title today of our conversation, our focus is, let's quit talking to ourselves, moving the conversation outside senior living. And the point of this is we're at a disruptive moment. We have, I would say, twin forces, one COVID and the other a new customer in terms of the boomer customer. But at the same time, many understandably have been so hunkered down with just trying to deal with the pandemic, with trying to keep residents and staff safe, with also just trying to survive financially and dealing with occupancy issues. But what we can lose sight of or lose time for, and the opportunity, is to listen to outside voices outside our sector that are more focused than ever on our customers. And so today with Sarah, we want to explore, well, what are they seeing when they look at aging and aging services? And what are they thinking about with our customer and how they view aging and opportunities there? So with that, again, Steve did no introduction, which was very nice of him. But again, I'm Bob Kramer. I'm founder and fellow at Nexus Insights. Sarah is a fellow with me as well at Nexus Insights. I also have long been associated with NIC, where I continue to serve as a strategic advisor. But let's get into our discussion. So, Sarah, first of all, thanks for being with me. I really appreciate it today.
Thanks for having me. Always fun to chat with you.
Well, you've worked with designers like Yves Bahar, you've met with Stella McCartney, with Andrew Rosen of Theory and Rag and Bone. What did you learn from those designers like this as you design for senior living? And talk to us about what insights did you pick up that might be helpful for those that are deep in the field of senior care and senior living.
Sure. So, as you said before, we really need to learn from these other industries, but also elevate our voice within a greater platform as well. And one thing about working with these phenomenal designers is that I've learned a lot about human-centered and universal design principles, and really that it's imperative to everything that we design. We're seeing many of these designers have much more sensitivity around age-inclusive designs now. And when we're working with senior living operators or with companies who are trying to better serve the mature consumer, we really need to create products and spaces and experiences around this human-centered approach. I founded Delight by Design, really because I think we need to delight the consumer at every age. And, one thing I learned with working with Eve, for instance, he helped to design Seismic's powered clothing, and I led commercialization for Seismic for 2 years. It was robotics integrated within apparel so that you could augment human strength and performance. And Eve designed the first prototype, or one of the first garments, and it was featured at the Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt Design Museum. And what I loved about the fact that it was exhibited at the Access and Ability exhibit was that it was really not just about the functionality, it was about the form. These designs should be beautiful and functional. It should be helpful as much as it is beautiful. And, I partnered with Transforming Age to help commercialize this product, because we really wanted to look to see how is the consumer going to approach this experience? How are they going to don and doff this clothing? How would they feel in the clothing? And I kept going back really to what Eve said. Designers are no longer just brought in for aesthetic purposes and visual changes, but they're brought in to really design how products and experiences connect with people. And design really helps to accelerate the adoption of new ideas, new ways of consuming, new ways of living. And I think it's really important to look how we're doing that within senior living. Last week, I was working with the Ferrari designer, Pininfarina, and they are just known for elegant designs, high quality designs. They really create stunning products and spaces, and they're getting into the senior living world. So as we have this heightened consumer expectation, and we have expectation for beauty and function, we really need to look at our spaces and our experiences differently and partner with, really high quality designers as we're designing these spaces out. So, it's been fascinating to step out into the world of design and fashion, and look at the inspiration of human-centered design and bringing those philosophies back into senior living and senior care.
Well, maybe we could take one moment to just human-centered design. And you talked about function, but then you also talked about beauty and appearance, but ultimately how the user experiences it. We've heard a lot of talk, especially recently, about ageism. And it's amazing how ageism can come into areas like clothing and like design, because things may be functional, but they're ugly. They're functional, but you feel demeaned because you have to use them, versus the experience makes you feel good about yourself. Could you maybe just share a few insights about that in terms of some of this work that you're doing?
Sure. Actually, I think, it leads really to why the Business of Fashion had me come out to their executive summit for C-suite fashion designers and fashion exectimes.
And this was outside London, was that right?
Yeah.
I remember hearing about that. No, so why did they want you to speak about aging? That's like, how did that get on their radar?
Well, ageism is everywhere, and we're all affected by it. And the older adult is not the only one affected by it. It's not the only demographic impacted. When are we supposed to have children? What is age appropriate? And, I'm an occupational therapist by clinical background, so I'm always looking at chronological and developmental, time frames, and really the perception of aging and shifting our perception of our own aging experience. But we're constantly bombarded with these stigmas and these stereotypes around aging, and we don't even realize it anymore, because it just happens to us in a way that it assaults our senses. And the fashion industry asked me, Business of Fashion asked me to come out, and I was shocked to who was in the room, because everyone, is someone you speak of at home but have never seen in person. Really, really amazing people, but they really were missing the opportunity, because they just, as a fashion industry, they're always looking at anti-aging campaigns, reduce the wrinkles, look thinner, look younger. And, I needed to hook them in some way first. So I really talked about the idea that they're missing the economic opportunity. The 70% of the world's luxury spend is the 55 and older population. Mm-hmm. And so as a business, they're missing the opportunity. So once their ears peaked up, I could actually talk about what matters more to me, and that's the human perspective. I mean, humans have connection with clothing and aspirational design, and we have the opportunity to shift the narrative in how we feel about our own aging experience, connecting with emotion and connecting with how we gain confidence through what we wear or how we perceive ourselves in the mirror. And it's not about age, it's about evoking emotion, feeling connected with our own human experience. And you see things like, Tommy Hilfiger has a whole adaptive clothing line. If we're designing for all instead of designing for old, then we have beautiful designs that are also functional. And really looking at this human-centered accessibility is really important, because if you're designing for all, then you will really extend the market reach, but also make people happier and delight your customer at every age.
Yeah. Well, you also, I think, just this past January at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, you gave the keynote address at the Wearables Tech Track, and then you were interviewed, as I understand it, by Katie Couric. Tell us what you learned from about the tech world of Silicon Valley and from the media and their interest in high tech, and how do we adopt that in senior living? What implications? What are ideas, messages we could take from that into our everyday world?
Well, it was interesting because I was asked to give the wearables talk because they wanted me to focus on wearables of the future are really fashion. Wearables should be designed to fit seamlessly into our life. It should be as easy as getting dressed in the morning. Again, we should evoke emotion, feel inspired and confident with how we move through life. Not just build products like wearables just to collect data, but really connect with and enhance the human experience. Katie Couric was interested in that because she does a segment on tech for good. And she interviewed me really to talk about how this technology and this wearable clothing that had robotic interaction was helping to augment human strength and mobility and how it improved daily lives. But what I found fascinating was really we need to start telling our story better in the senior living world, because all we do is try to improve the quality of people's lives, helping them to thrive. And when we're designing products with purpose, people are interested. Katie Couric wanted to know how these technologies were really, improving environment, improving lifestyle. And we do this every day in senior living to really improve the quality of life experience. But we have to do so with purpose. So one thing I learned, you mentioned the Innovation Center in China that I developed, and I had created a smart, connected living environment to really improve accessibility at its core. I mean, it's beautiful, it's biophilic in design, it has light and natural elements. It drives the human experience in a way that is really person-centered, but it was really designed with intent and purpose to increase access to resources in a remote area of China. So I didn't put a robot in an innovation center in order just to say we have a robot and that's cool. Tech for tech's sake isn't going to go anywhere in senior living and really with any consumer experience. I put a robot so that we could have a specialist from Beijing remote telehealth in and be able to go bedside to bedside, room to room, and access resources better for the individuals who are going through the innovation center. I didn't just put voice first technology to say, yeah, wow, that's cool, we can use this now and I can control the lights. I thought about mobility and the fact that as we have a decreased mobility or decreased safety, we are looking at ways for increased accessibility within our environment to control our environment in different ways and limit some need for certain functional applications. Same for biometric scanning. The technology world, we're not going to just have this data out there that doesn't impact the consumer experience. We're not going to have behavior change unless we really take the technology and apply it to something that is meaningful to us, that we consider purposeful. So biometric scanning can't just go somewhere to notify them of a need, but it really should come back to us, information and, that we can then act upon to help change our health behaviors, help change our experience. So I think that was the fascinating part, really, if you're always going back to that form and function and delighting the consumer, you're looking at all experience that way. Technology, the messaging of the work that we're doing, the brand creation of the work that we're doing in senior living. And we have a story to tell. And I think that people want to hear it because we are impacting the world in a different way. We just need to start to tell the story a little bit better, I think.
Well, let's pick up on the fact that one of the things, these different places, companies you've been working with, the talks you've been asked to give, the consulting you've been doing, there seems to be, and now of course COVID has hit, but there seems to be increased, even before COVID, but heightened by it, increased interest in targeting aging, the aging market, investing in aging, designing for aging. Where, who's leading in that, and why do you think that is happening? And then tie that to what opportunities does that give for a senior housing provider or a long-term care provider, that there are these folks from other industries that are really targeting and thinking about this market and how to serve it?
Well, I think we are hearing about the big tech companies all the time, so maybe we go there for now. I think that Amazon's move, for instance, to hire Gina from CDW is a long time coming. They put together an aging task force about 5 years ago. They really have been working on how are they creating services and products in a different way for the aging consumer and for senior living. And I work right now with a progressive senior living operator who is the only one we've negotiated with Amazon to be able to fleet manage their own voice first devices within Amazon. Because for other industries like hospitality and even the health systems, the hospital systems, they required a third-party management system that is often costly and unnecessary for senior living. But we need to be able to control the data and the information that is exchanged via these consumer products. So how can we do that in a controlled manner? And Apple and Google hadn't done that yet. So how are we fleet managing and controlling, the data and the safety of the information from Amazon? Well, it's important, I think, that we have a voice at the table as they're developing these things. And that's a great move to have someone like Gina join them, because they're going to be able to continue that connection and that communication into the senior living industry and have our voice heard as these services are being developed. And hopefully it's a great sign that that's going to grow, so that we do have a voice and we can integrate in these partnerships. Amazon announced that they're into telehealth now, and so we're gonna see more of these things that we do in different ways along the care continuum, along the lifestyle continuum, that they're going to approach because they have the resources and the logistical support. But right now is a time more than ever that we have an opportunity to partner in different ways. So if you look at, for instance, Black & Decker and Stanley, they invested significantly into Pillow Health. It's a smart medication management system that we all needed in the market to be able to help with med management. And Stanley Black & Decker stood behind it, co-branded it, and now we're taking a startup that may have only had a small reach into the home or into the environment for med management, and now we're bringing a big name and we're putting them together and allowing increased resource access. Bob, you've seen this as well. Centric's acquisition of Senior TV, and I know you're on their advisory council. Now NIC's acquisition of Vision LTC. Interested in your view too. What do you think about the moves and the role of acquisitions? Because I think these partnerships are exciting and can, compound the effects that we have. Tell me what you're thinking about this, because you're seeing it firsthand too.
Well, thanks. I would agree. I guess several things I would say. One, I think there are opportunities to partner if we understand the value we have to bring to the table, because oftentimes we don't in senior living. And I think that gets to our messaging. But I think there are enormous opportunities to partner, because whether it's in a COVID situation where we realize, for instance, we don't have some of the resources to be able to deliver remote patient monitoring or to deliver healthcare in the midst of a pandemic to our residents in their home, and their home is in our community. And they're afraid of being sent to the hospital. They're afraid of the doctor's office. But this creates enormous opportunities for partners, because there are folks, and again, that have resources, have talent, and have dollars, but they want customers. and we have customers, and we not only have customers, but we also have customers that enable you to scale much more quickly. And we have insights. We've been doing chronic disease management, but we oftentimes haven't even taken credit for it, and sometimes haven't even realized we're doing it. And we definitely haven't known what data ourselves we should be tracking. And so to me, the areas here, I guess put simply though, I would say in response to your question, Sarah, we're either going to both interact with and partner with these outside sectors and outside companies, or we're going to find that they're going to end up stealing our customer. We have great partnership opportunities. We have a great setting to offer. We have good data, or we should, and we have the opportunity to do that. But ultimately, I think one of the challenges right now is that many providers are exhausted, both physically, their teams, but also financially. They're strapped. And that's a recipe for disruption coming from outside. So my point would be, hey, let's, and you look at it with NIC and the acquisition and then spinning out of with LTC Vision and the spinning out of NIC Map Vision. This was an opportunity to bring the brand and the incredible resources and depth of what NIC has built with NIC Map, particularly on the supply side, with the very sophisticated platform and the mining of more demand data and more healthcare data to really create this powerhouse. This was the sum is what is it? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So I think there are opportunities like that across senior living today if we just look up. But we have to understand how we and our customer are viewed by the person we want to partner with. If we don't understand that and we just say, I'm from senior living, I've got this great opportunity for you, we're not really selling ourselves. So those would be some of any thoughts you have on that as you've kind of looked. I mean, you've been involved in partnerships. You've seen a lot of startups, both through Agent 2.0 and then since then, and all the consulting you've done. Any other insights you would bring if I'm a senior living operator today and I'm listening to this, and I'm trying, to me, this is a sea of all these things out here, and it's like, and I don't have the dollars to make a bad investment on a startup. And I'm thinking, what in the world do I do? What advice would you have for an operator in that situation, Sarah?
Well, I think that it's important to look at alternative partnerships as well. What do you bring and what do you contribute? So I know, there are some startups, depending on the phase that they're in, they're coming to you just for the sale, but they have maybe a minimum viable product and something that doesn't drive true value yet, but they're very interested in getting into the market. And I think that the discussion is there's the biggest role that I had at Aging 2.0 and at Genesis was translating between investors and providers and startups, and they all speak different languages sometimes. So having a common language where you can say, okay, this is what I can bring to the table. For instance, we partnered at Genesis with a startup to provide clinical advice, clinical workflow, as well as the ability to better understand what the product needed in order to grow and evolve. And for that, we were having early access to their MVP, and we're giving them data, but we're also giving them, access to improve outcomes now with us, with what they have already, but also developing it and kind of co-developing it with intentional workflow and enhanced clinical design. And you have to understand your value proposition that you bring back to the table with some of these startups in order to then have really meaningful partnership. And I think thinking outside the box is so important now more than ever, when margins and occupancy and are we're mid hopefully soon to be post pandemic, but we're still feeling all of the very real immediate needs of operating. And we also need to pick our head up, as you said, to see what's coming and how we can be a part of how we create what's ahead of us, instead of having things thrown at us and forced at us. So I think it's important to look at alternative partnerships.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's come back. We focus there on startups. There are also, you've talked about Amazon. There are a lot of really big companies, big tech. There's obviously CVS. They responded to a national crisis and emergency, but I'm also sure that for CVS and Walgreens, having the opportunity to go into thousands of long-term care communities was something that they will reap a lot of intelligence and value out of that and the relationships. But talk some about just what are some other moves you see happening by large companies looking at our space, and what sort of impacts do you see happening from that? What kind of opportunities do you think that provides for the assisted living provider or the skilled nursing provider out there? And what kind of threats?
Well, I think it's to your point about, they're coming for our space. If we don't want to partner with them, we may be replaced. So I think it's not entirely, it's obviously a shock and awe statement, but we do need to look to see what's not our domain expertise. Why are we coding right now or building things on our own when we have experts who certainly have, much more experience than we do in certain markets and building communities, building digital platforms, building connectivity upstream and downstream along the continuum. You can see partnerships, like PCC, for instance, extending their reach up and downstream through acquisition, through, acqui-hire, where they're taking data and enhancing what they are able to really act upon. And I think we have an opportunity now to see where are we missing where are the gaps, where are the consumer expectations that we're not reaching? Where have we been so focused that we've missed other opportunities? And how can we look at partnerships in a different way with these big companies that have much more logistical support, much more expertise in certain domains? I think that's also looking at the investment market. I think if you're looking at, primetime partners, for instance, Abby came from SoulCycle. She's bringing, incredible growth experience from SoulCycle, and then of course Thrive Global. But now she's looking at how do we invest in the older adult market and the longevity economy and care coordination, as well as consumer market. And so I think it's looking to see really elevating the voice of what our needs are, and then finding the right solutions partners, investment partners to bring kind of to close that gap for us. And I think we need to stop thinking we can do it all ourselves, or that we have to do it all ourselves, and take a look at who's out there that we can partner with. Well,
tell us just a little bit, and the most important thing when I talked about all your different affiliations and backgrounds, I didn't talk specifically about Delight by Design, your company that you founded. Tell us just for a moment about Delight by Design. Why did you form it? And, you know, what are you hoping to do through Delight by Design?
So I have been advising and consulting for a very long time, in addition to my core roles at Aging 2.0 and and beyond. And I realized, especially in this last year, that there are a variety of needs at the intersection that I really drive value in, and it's helping investors understand the marketplace better and really looking at what the true needs are and not just perceived needs, which are often misperceived because they are coming from potentially an ageist view, or there's stigmas attached and they might not understand the actual landscape. So trying to help them understand that, and then also along the care continuum, whether it's senior living operators who are looking to enhance their environment, build community, focus on wellness, look at technology integration, and really understanding how to delight their consumer and look to define who that consumer really is for the future. And then startups are always my sweet spot. So technology companies that are either looking to innovate within their larger organization, or startups that are needing to understand product market fit, market entry strategy, as well as really designing products with a human-centered experience. I've brought together a team that can dive into each of those areas and really help bring these movements forward with the idea of delighting the consumer at every age.
Wonderful. Well, that's exciting and an exciting resource. I think a couple of things that, realizing what you're good at and what you're not good at, and what are the things you need that presently you don't have those resources in your team or perhaps even in the industry. And I think that's one of the, basically there are a lot of big companies, a lot of small companies, bottom line, an awful lot of capital that's looking to invest in the aging and in aging services and in the longevity market. And they see our customer, they see our resident. They're coming for that resident. That's an opportunity for all of us in seniors housing and care. If we just view it as a threat, they're quite likely going to steal our customers. If we see it as an opportunity, it's an opportunity to align with talent and resources that can make us stronger, and more importantly, that can delight our residents, delight them with the experiences that we can offer. So thanks, Sarah. Thanks for your time. We wish you all the success with Delight by Design. We're excited that you're being kind of an ambassador going out to many of these industries and talking about not only the longevity economy, but specifically talking about senior living. So thanks for conversing with me today. And Steve, we will toss it back to you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Oh.
Okay, there we go. Let's try it again. Such a great conversation. I've got like 2 pages of notes, and we've had some interesting comments here. Michael Owens notes that Best Buy is starting to open small neighborhood stores and is really interested in healthcare. And just in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've seen some big acquisitions. IN2L was purchased by a big private equity, and Connected Living was purchased by Omega Healthcare REIT. And I find myself thinking that maybe we don't see the value and the power that we have in the marketplace, and that's part of the reason why there's so much reluctance there to engage in these things. And the other thing that's really struck me is that it seems like there's so many operators that are taking the position that they can't do anything better. They've got to keep doing what they're doing, even though their occupancy isn't so great, rather than stepping back and saying, maybe this isn't working and we ought to do something completely different, even though we've invested into these things. So I sort of want to throw that at you before we call it to a halt.
Well, Sarah, you want to dive into that one briefly? or I'm sure you have some thoughts, and I'll offer a few too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it comes down to the branding and messaging. I do think that we know what we do, but you've talked recently, Steve, that there's, we confuse ourselves sometimes. So I do think we need to learn our messaging, define our messaging a little bit better, advocate for the things that we bring to the human experience, to lifestyle, to the living environment, to the aging experience. And when we are able to elevate that, I think we'll have a bigger seat at the table with some of these other conversations with folks like Best Buy that are looking at this space very closely. But we don't need just a geek squad that doesn't understand the older adult experience or need. We need someone who's truly trained in what accessibility and universal design means when it comes to technology and integration of technology into living experience. So yeah, I think you're spot on, but I think we do have to advocate for ourselves more of what we bring to human experience.
I think that's a great point, and I would just add to that we have to get back to and be very good in terms of messaging about what we do for quality of life, not just care. This year has put an enormous focus on care, and it should. I mean, it's important, and I would say that the table stakes for basically prevention and response to pandemics and to infections have been raised. The whole way we have to think about healthcare and the healthcare of our residents in our buildings, their homes. But ultimately, we have to offer an experience that is aspirational, that's about a sense of belonging. I think when you look at some of these different acquisitions, for instance, the Omega one of Connected Living, that IN2L, the Centrix platform as it's expanding, they're all dealing with engagement and what makes the person feel alive and brings a sense of joy and I'm alive, not just simply I'm going to make it through the day. And ultimately, that's the best of senior living. But we must be careful we don't have the pandemic just reinforce that we're all about care. There's a lot of technology and there's a lot to help us do that job better. But ultimately, it's the quality of life. It is well-being. And how do we address the well-being of our residents? And to me, that's the most exciting thing. And it's so interesting to me that a number of the things you mentioned are all coming around to a recognition of the importance of that. It wasn't valued that much prior to the pandemic.
Yeah. So do a couple of little pieces of business here. First off, we are at Senior Living Foresight, we are totally committed to this idea that the big value proposition is creating great life experiences for older people inside senior living. And so to that end, we have a conference that we're doing, kicks off April 6th, called Evolve 2021. And it is all about reimagining what we can do for our residents, because we're sure that if we get that programming right, creating great experiences like, we not only will we fill out every empty room, we will actually have people standing in line wanting to come live out lives in senior living. So I want to encourage you to do that. The price is so stupidly cheap. You should have every executive director, every life enrichment leader participating. It's 3 hours a day, 3 days a week for 2 weeks, so they can still do their jobs and participate. Plus, the recordings will be available for a year. The second thing is that we have a new texting community that you will get occasional stuff on once or twice a month. I sent out something special yesterday that you only get if you're part of the community. The way you join is text the word TV to 916-659-5287. And you can actually text me and I'll answer back as well. So Sarah, Bob, thank you very much. Thank you for changing the world for older people. We are an exciting time right now. And thank you for watching. I know we're way over time. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.